Ladies and gentlemen, this is Welcome to Die Gaming, and tonight we have a very special guest.
Didn't know I was going to cut to that. Anyways, yes, welcome to Die Gaming. We have a very special guest tonight who has hit the scene in the past year on YouTube and Patreon, Jared of Avalanche Reviews. Jared, how are you?
Yeah, doing great. Thanks for having me here.
Me and Rob both started watching Jared when he started throwing out his Resident Evil retrospectives. And they're very detailed, and for the most part, we almost align completely with it, his opinions, and they differ from what a lot of people would normally kind of expect from the Resident Evil series. And of course, Jared would go on to break on to delving into Silent Hill and other aspects of survival horror games. We're all three of us are big survival horror nerds. Mm-hmm. So we wanted to discuss today, the topic we kind of agreed on doing was why Resident Evil 7 is one of the best horror games out there, if not the best. But it's not the best Resident Evil game in terms of the way the series is going. And we're also going to touch on what we've heard about the upcoming Resident Evil 8 and see what our opinions are. So, Rob, Resident Evil 7.
Well, yeah, it could be the greatest horror game ever made. Personally, I like PT more than Resident Evil 7 because it's basically the foundation for the game. That and I like Silent Hill more than Resident Evil, so naturally I like PT more than RE7. But not counting PT, Resident Evil 7 probably is the greatest completed horror game ever made. But not the greatest Resident Evil. I would say the greatest Resident Evil. It's up for grabs, but if I had to choose one game, I would pick Resident Evil Remake for the GameCube. And specifically the GameCube Remake, not the enhanced version, which I don't really care for, to be honest with you.
You're all against the lighting?
It's not just that, it's the lighting. There are a few changes. Jared brought it up in his RE retrospective for Remake, saying that there are no naked zombies in the underground lab. And yeah, that's a big deal. You know what? Little details like that.
That is a big deal.
You know what? Actually, I was actually corrected on that. I think, I don't remember exactly what the comment said, but I think you have to play a certain difficulty for Chris to see them, if I'm not mistaken.
That's very weird. But the thing is that in general is still different than what the original was, though, right? Because the original was...
And not only that, too, is they did a pretty bad job of scaling the pre-rendered background images.
Those look like garbage.
Yeah, so the problem is they don't look like garbage consistently, though, because some rooms will look really good, and some rooms you can see little block boundary compression artifacts, which it's weird when you're playing a video game and you're running around in real time and you're seeing like internet JPEG artifacts in your background of your video game. It's just a little off-putting.
Well, at the beginning of this generation, a lot of those remakes and rehashes kind of came out just as a cheap cash in. Now you see the Switch doing it. But it's like, here's a half-hearted attempt at something just to make some more money. It's just something we could throw out there that provided, minimal resources in terms of, what was needed. They can maximize profit on it. You sell something for $60. You minimize how much input went into it, but you still come out a quality game. But at the same time, it's like, well, it's not the same as the original. You bellyached, and a lot of people bellyached about the remakes or the remasters of Silent Hill 2 and 3.
Well, he had a good reason for that. They're trash. They're absolutely trash.
That's fair. Yeah.
Actually, my favorite video you put out is HD Collection. That's my favorite video you've done because it's unfortunate that a lot of people that'll play Silent Hill 2 and 3 will inevitably end up playing that version.
That's the travesty there. Because if it was a bad version of the games, we have the originals, and that's not a big deal, but a lot of younger kids with PS3s and Xbox 360s, or even adults who never got into Silent Hill, like now this is their first opinion of it.
Well, hopefully in the future, this next generation, that everything will just be backwards compatible, at least to a degree.
Right, with the PS5, that would be very interesting to see. I'm really interested to see how the upscaling works, whether or not it's emulation like software solution, or they have some type of hardware baked in.
Well, the PS3 had the smoothing and the other stuff with PS1 games. It would still play that, and it made a big difference. But
Yeah.
you know, a lot of people, I think, also in terms of backwards compatibility, I think it's just kind of a laziness thing. Personally, if I was gonna, it'd be easy to have easy access. Better to have easy access to it. But you can literally just go buy a damn PS1 for like $30 or $40, and just play whatever you want. The hard disk, the games you can buy for cheap. I mean,
That is my argument. Usually, just buy the originals. I will say this though, I don't think it's laziness that keeps them from including backwards compatibility, because what a lot of people don't understand is you have to have hardware from that generation baked into the mother. Like, you have to have a chip specifically handling, let's say, PS2 games. Like, the PS3 had PS2 hardware on board, right? And it would be hard for you to build, like, let's say, a PS4 in, because it's a pretty small, compact little system. It'd be really hard to bake in PS3 hardware in there. I think it was the Emotion engine on PS3. You would have to have like an Emotion engine driving chip soldered onto the board. You know what I mean? So it's a little harder than you might think. So I understand why they don't do it, but it is lazy that they don't include some type of like software solution. Like, we have emulators on our PC. You know what I mean? That's what the PSN essentially is. But I would love to have it baked into the console. So you put a disc in and you're good. You don't have to rebuy all your games.
Versus, you know, Xbox is you put a disc in, it just checks the disc and you still download the game.
Yeah.
And it's something. But, you know, in terms of that, for me, that's a nice option. But I also buy new consoles because I want to play new games that take advantage of technology. I remember when I got my PS4 Pro, I went back and played Final Fantasy 15 and like two other games. What's the one? Bloodborne.
Oh, Bloodborne.
Bloodborne ran a lot better. And yeah, to me, I'm like, if you were going to make a modern day Castlevania game, the game is so golf and dark, like that could easily be something like that. I noticed you've been playing Aria Sario on streams recently.
Oh, yeah.
He loves Aria Sario.
Yeah, I've beaten that game about 3 times.
It's so good. You know, any Metroidvania game really you can just pick up and put down. It's not even one of those things where you have to beat the game. You could just play it and then just be totally good with it. You put it down, touch it again, maybe like a month later, pick it up, and you're right back into it. You don't have to restart it. It's just, you know exactly what you're doing.
Yeah. That's why. But honestly, in a weird way, the original Resident Evil was like a 3D Metroidvania game, just based on the exploration aspects and you know, having to lock areas and kind of like backtracking and stuff like that.
You're not wrong, yeah.
And luckily, 7, which we got off topic there for a minute. Well, you know, when we get us together, it's just there's so much information between all of us here. But 7 kind of, you know, to me, that's what made it great too. Was especially just inside the Baker house. It was like a modern take on the Spencer Mansion, but it wasn't.
Really was.
But it was simplified. It wasn't overly complicated. And it still had that same type of backtracking and almost Metroidvania vibe to it. But yeah, the RE engine is that's the best engine this generation. Like, you can say what you want about God of War and Horizon Zero Dawn and stuff, and where Unreal's at now. But when it comes down to it, there's just such a lifelike aspect to Resident Evil 7 that makes you feel like you're actually there. And I haven't felt that since I played the first Resident Evil when I was 13 when it launched. When a game can draw you in that much, and that's without VR. I mean, you know, you get into that moment, you don't know what's going to pop out. You know, Jack Baker breaks down a wall. You know,
like Mr. X and Resident Evil 2. That's a throwback to that.
I still think you still can keep tabs on Mr. X in a way in Resident Evil 2.
Mr. X was incredibly easy to avoid. All you had to do was just leave the room, and that was it. There's nothing. We have to let Jared talk some though, man.
It's Jared.
He's the celebrity in this video.
He is a celebrity. I'm excited for him to be here.
No, seriously, the RE retrospective and the SH retrospective are some of the most respectable
you just detail everything you do, bro. Like it's ridiculous, man.
Oh, thank you so much for that, man. It's kind of an obsession, and it's working out because when I make the video, I want to include as many details as humanly possible, and I'm glad some people get into that because that is it's a little frustrating.
That and you do a really good job of setting the mood in the video. I mean, that's one of the biggest things for. I mean, that's something I wish we could get with ours too. Is just setting like that atmosphere and the mood that draws you in. I think it's guys from Red Letter Media. Mike is a big fan of Ghost Adventures, but he's kind of in the closet about it. But he made a big mention. It's like, whether you believe, and we watch that too. I don't know if you watch that, but
I used to. I went through a phase where I watched, I think it was like 2 seasons I watched in like a week of Ghost Adventures.
Well, they do such a good job. It doesn't matter if they find anything or not, but they do such a good job with editing and creating an atmosphere that I would rather sit there and binge that than go watch a damn horror movie in the movie theater, you know?
Right.
No matter, like, if The Conjuring's good or not. Yeah, I'll watch The Conjuring definitely, but Ghost Adventures is like, man, they take a cue in terms of what survival horror has done in making their television show.
You know what's really weird is I love survival horror and psychological horror, like video games, but I don't like a lot of, I mean, most horror movies I can't stand. I like a very specific like sect of psychological thrillers and stuff, and then zombie movies, and that's it. I don't really watch any slashers or any of the Japanese horror flicks that come out. Just don't get into them.
So, do you like Day of the Dead from 1985?
Oh my God, that is such an underrated zombie movie. Everybody throws it underneath Dawn and Night, but it's so.
I did too until recently. I watched it on Halloween, and I think you want to know what the most underrated aspect of me of that movie was the damn soundtrack.
Oh,
it's
so good.
damn synthy.
Okay. Yeah, you remember in the first video I did when we were talking about Day of the Dead, and I said that one of the best things about the movie is the very first moment. No, the very first moment. The very first moment you see the shot and the atmosphere. It's immediate.
Yeah.
The movie was supposed to be a lot bigger, but Romero didn't have the budget to make it as grand as he wanted to, because if you remember the scientist Frankenstein, the movie says that the zombie to human ratio is 400,000 to 1. So Romero wanted to be able to project that in the movie, but the only scene that we actually got to see anything like that with was the very beginning when they were in Florida.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's my phone.
Such a good scene too when the helicopter pilot stops the guy with the megaphone and tells him to listen. You can actually hear their moans over the engine. Oh, yes. Classic.
Yes. Yeah. Honestly, that's my favorite zombie film. That's my favorite of the Dead trilogy.
I like the remake of the original.
I think
Resident Evil.
Exactly.
I think Resident Evil. I think Mikami pulled a lot from that.
With the remake?
Yeah, because we've talked about that.
Definitely some stuff from the original from 1968. But the one from '90, I definitely felt that had a lot more influence on the original Resident Evil.
Yeah, by far.
Sure.
The sound effects and the way they set the atmosphere, and just the music.
You know what's really odd is I used to live in Tennessee when I moved from Miami to Tennessee, and around that time is when I discovered Resident Evil, and I didn't have any friends because I moved to a brand new town, and I was just in my room with a PS1, an old CRT, and me and my brother just played the absolute hell out of the original Resident Evil, and around that same time, we were staying up late watching TV, just flipping through cable channels, and I flipped through a channel, and I saw the Tom Savini remake of Night of the Living Dead, and it was so familiar and just so close to what Resident Evil 1 was. I assumed that I just didn't know there was a Resident Evil movie. You know what I mean?
Yeah. It's definitely ridiculous. Although, I kind of take that back. My favorite zombie movie is the original Return of the Living Dead because it is campy and just ridiculous. It's so good. That's the best B horror movie of all time. But
I would say that probably has the best punk rock strip scene ever made.
I think it has the only punk rock strip scene ever made. It's fantastic.
There might be one other out there.
Maybe. Yeah. So Jared, you've not touched Resident Evil 7 in VR.
That's
I think that's definitely something you need to make. Do you have it on PC or PS4?
So I played 7 on PC, and I've never actually played 7 on a console. But I also don't have any VR hardware on either of those platforms. So if I was going to get VR, that would probably be the only game that I'm honestly interested in playing in VR would be RE7, because the rest of it just seems like not my cup of tea, you know?
And it sucks you in so much, and that's why I'm definitely in the, I think the majority here of that's what pushes it over the top for me to thinking that's the best horror game ever. Now, we can't play, I mean, there might be, I think, there might be a hack for PT to do VR, but even then it's still limited. I can't really think, I'm sure there's a couple other VR horror games out there, but what is your take on Resident Evil 7? Are you in agreement that that's the top of all time, or what's your opinion?
It's close up there for me. I don't know if I'd say top of all time, because I didn't even really have that many issues with it, but there were games, and this isn't RE7's fault at all, but there were games that I played when I was really young and really susceptible to being like scared. You know what I mean? Now as a 30-year-old man, it's a little harder to get me shaking in my boots. But I think, these other games just had the benefit of me getting to them when I was young, playing them in a dark room as like a preteen. That's just a little easier to scare me. But RE7, I think the reason why it was so effective for me is because I just expected not to like it. I never played it up until I did that video on RE7, which was, that was last year, maybe a year and a half ago. So I was real late to the game. But I never touched it because I loved the original so much. And at the same time, I had never played RE6 because I loved the survival horror games. And I wasn't like down on them. I was just like, this isn't for me. So I just, I won't play them. And then the retrospective came along and kind of forced me to. And I'm glad I did, because I ended up really fucking loving 7.
Yeah. So another one. So you bring that up about getting scared in horror games, like modern day. Have you played the Outlast series?
No, I don't play a lot of non-combat, like first-person horror games. My big thing on horror has always been, I think a lot of times companies like kneecap themselves by making a game where combat is not an option, instead of having it be possible, but then disincentivizing it so that, let's say you have a weapon and you can attack the enemy, but it's going to beat the absolute shit out of you. I would rather Outlast be like that than, a one-hit kill, he finds you, you're gone.
Good point. Outlast 2 was definitely scared the shit out of me, though. The first one, Rob still plays it. I gave up because it's all atmosphere. It's dark, and there is no self-defense mechanism in the game, so it's just.
Well, it's funny that the point I'm at is I'm being chased by a guy who literally will kill you with one hit, and it's a lot of trial and error with that particular game. And I think a lot of like Soma is like that. Soma's okay, but I prefer games that don't have an enemy that's automatically one hit kill like 90% of the game.
Yeah, exactly. It's okay to make combat so hard that they might kill you if you're in an encounter, but then you feel like that's your fault. Whereas if you get caught in Outlast or any of the other first-person horror games, it feels like it's the game that's killing you instead of your actions. You know what I mean?
I agree. It's beyond your control.
Well, you get it also kind of ruins it, because you get to a point where you're just like, I'm going to go ahead and just die as many times as I have to before I get through this area. Yeah. And that's what happens in Outlast. And to some degree, it's like that with Amnesia. I think Amnesia is a better game than Outlast. It's more gothic, definitely.
In terms of another rival that's kind of popped up, would be Mikami's new games. Evil Within. Have you touched those at all, Jared?
I have, and man, I feel terrible because so many people were on my Twitter, and when I would stream, they'd be like, listen, you gotta try out these games. And obviously I'm a fan of Mikami's earlier works, but so I ended up buying the first one on Steam, and I was like, yeah, let's do this, and we started streaming it, and it was kind of slow for me to catch on to how to play it and stuff, and to really get used to the mechanics and the controls and how everything worked. And as I was playing it, I was just having no fun at all, and I put a good, I think 3 hours into it. And I just kind of decided, man, this is not for me. I did not like it at all.
Yeah, one to me felt like Resident Evil 4.5. It's like what Mikami would have done if he had the opportunity to do 5. But it didn't click with me until they released the second one and then put a first-person mode on it. Same with Rob. I don't know if you've touched that or not yet, but that's almost it's almost an open world element and heavily survival horror, and it's pretty tense. Have you touched that at all? I keep saying
no. I've heard this. The second Evil Within is the one that everybody swears by. So if I'm not sworn off the series, I'm definitely willing to play the second one. And you saying there's a first person mode ever since my RE2 remake first person mod experience. That sounds attractive.
Yeah, and it's not a mod either. It's either them or Bethesda, whoever was behind it, whoever developed it. Which I don't think Mikami actually was a developer. He was just like a producer on this one, whereas he did the first one.
So let me say something really offensive. What you just described right there is peak Shinji Mikami. Because he is a good idea man and a terrible game maker, if you ask me. It took him until Resident Evil Remake to make a survival horror game that was good after Resident Evil. Because ever since Resident Evil 1, he was trying to make something that was not Resident Evil 1. And everybody was telling him, no, this is really good. We like survival horror. We like the zombies. We like the setting. We like the atmosphere and the difficulty. And Shinji Mikami was like, no, you need to dual wield MP5s. There has to be explosions everywhere. There has to be these insane controls. And everybody's like, what are you doing? And Hideki Kamiya grabbed the series from him. It's like, no, we're making Resident Evil 2. Go fucking sit down. And Shinji Mikami does that for every single game he touches. He makes one really interesting idea. And Resident Evil was that idea. He killed it. It was incredible. And I don't think anybody's willing to argue that it wasn't. But then he spent his time slowly destroying it as he went. And other developers who were better game makers and less idea men, like Shinji Mikami gave them the blueprints. And they go, okay, now here's how we make a functional product. And then Shinji Mikami moves on to make RE4, which is the least Resident Evil thing ever, and then proceeds to continue making RE4 until I assume the day that he dies.
With 2, yes, the team actually put out a patch 2 or 3 months after it came out to make it in first person. And I tell you what, that game is it tracks your sound. You cannot make sound. You cannot make noise. And I don't know if they're basically ghouls, I want to call. They're basically like zombies, but they're aggressive. You can get teamed up. There's bosses. The setting is literally out of this world. It's in a dream world, but it is definitely, in terms of this generation, I'd say top 5, only with first person. I didn't like it in third person at all. But that definitely falls in my top 5 category of, because that is survival horror. It's just not horror. It's survival horror.
Oh, the name of the zombies are the Lost.
The Lost.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I have a very specific thing with zombies. I really enjoy the humanless, husk of a form. If I see zombies acting intelligently, let's say in RE4 or the Evil Within, where they're carrying torches and they're
I hate that
and stuff. For some reason, that destroys. You can still make a whole game around that.
It hurts the immersion. It hurts the immersion of it.
Yeah.
I don't even call the 4 zombies. Those were the Ganados, right?
So, yeah, they're Ganados, but they're really more like the Thing. They're a parasite. They take over a body and they're basically just pretending to be people, human beings.
Okay.
Yeah. But that's what gets me about zombies is that there's this thing that looks like a human, but he's acting so inhumanly.
Yeah.
I don't know, something about it just psychologically tears me apart. But then if you have them doing things that are recognizably human, like using their brains to flank you and then holding torches so they can see and then lifting up ladders, I'm like, oh, well, that kind of takes away the real appeal.
I think the worst when it comes to zombies using weapons is probably 6. Because you have the...
I like to
I
forget
don't
about
even remember the
6.
name, what they're called, but they're in Jake's campaign. They use
The
guns.
Chihuahuas.
Oh, God, man. I'm sorry, but Resident Evil 6 has got to be one of the worst games ever made. When you compare it to its history, like the first 3 games, the original remake, and even Resident Evil 0, you think, God, it got to Resident Evil 6. This is where it went.
But I know I made this exact same argument in my video on RE6, but that was the next logical step for Resident Evil after 4 and 5.
You're probably right.
They set themselves up for failure though, and that was because to me that's because Mikami was gone. They might not like Mikami's intrusion and stupid ideas.
Dude, that shit went so far off the fucking rail. Like,
well, they wanted to be Call of Duty. They wanted to be Gears of War.
I mean, look, if you didn't call it a Resident Evil game, like it's fun. I mean, yeah, it's a fun game, but it's not like if you call it Resident Evil, that's one of the worst games ever made. That's one of the reasons Resident Evil 7 was. That's why I said.
That's why I made.
No, I mean, it all,
7's a saving grace. It slowed the pace way down.
It came full circle. You had Resident Evil 4 that ended up becoming the most popular of the series, and the majority of your Resident Evil fans on YouTube in the comment section who berate Jared over not liking Resident Evil 4. Like, that's the game they started with. They didn't play Resident Evil 3. They didn't play the remake. They didn't play the second.
They all started with 4.
Even though 2 was incredibly popular, even though 2 was huge and you can consider it mainstream, it wasn't mainstream compared to 4.
Yeah, exactly. You're absolutely right. That's literally my argument nonstop on Twitter is, no offense to anybody this pertains to, but everybody who argues, and I mean like a vast majority of people who go, oh yeah, I prefer 4, are people who are around middle school to high school age when 4 came out and it was the first Resident Evil game.
Yeah,
I've heard the story a million times. I've had, at this point, probably thousands of comments, because I always talk shit about RE4 in every video.
You always do, yeah.
I was the one who always said it was overrated, and then until about a year ago, I started picking it up again, and it's got its atmosphere.
No, it's
so ridiculously.
It does some things good, and like I said, in when I talked about it, it's a fun game. It's really fun. Like it's super fun to pull off a really good headshot, and then boom to melee attack, and then knife on the ground, and then you're doing crowd control, and there's enemies around you and stuff. Like it's super visceral and fun. It has really bad pacing. It's obviously not a Resident Evil game, but that's because Shinji Mikami made it. Shinji Mikami made one good Resident Evil game, and then improved on that one good Resident Evil game with a remake. That is it.
I almost think with 7, they put producers in a room and strapped them to like shock therapy because they wanted to keep the elements as simple as possible. Because think about it, you basically had 4 bosses. Now, a lot of people, I don't know how many people have actually beaten the game, but I think it's weird that there is a really disgusting aspect that never got attention on the internet, and that was Marguerite's shooting her vagina as her weak spot. Like, that's pretty fucking nasty.
Disgusting. That was a very disgusting boss fight.
And a lot of people, they'll bring up the Baker part, but the ship is literally, it gets a little bit over the top in the ship, and you can kind of feel that Capcomness of 4, 5, and 6 coming out towards the end of the game.
It doesn't get too bad.
It doesn't get too bad, but you feel it.
Yeah,
but the ship is scary.
That for sure, as far as gameplay goes, but I really like the atmosphere of the ship. I'm one of those guys who actually like that.
And I'm there on VR right now. I haven't beaten it in VR yet. I'm there on VR now, and it's fucking ridiculous. It's just dark.
That's the thing about Resident Evil 7. I probably spent a good 10 hours of just fucking off in the game, just walking around the game, just going through the Baker Mansion. Going through the boathouse, going through Lucas's little area of the mansion, and constantly going back to the trailer outside, which is my favorite save room in the history of Resident Evil.
That's great.
I love that.
I love the save room music in 7 just because it's got that hick twang to it, but it's also calming.
Yeah, for sure. And it has almost like a dream-like kind of, not reverb, but echo to it. It's good stuff, man.
Yeah, the ship is definitely a forgotten. I don't know if it's forgotten. I just think a lot of people that talk about the game and praise it. I almost wonder if they didn't beat it because there's so much more to it than just the Baker Mansion.
Yeah, I think that's the case with a lot of people who argue with me about RE4 is they have this idea of it. And, people will be like, no, yeah, the pacing's perfect. And I'm like, honestly, I genuinely think that you started this game up and put a few hours into it, got past the starting village, and that's your experience with the game because it's paced like garbage past the starting village.
I'm not going to argue. I did that too for years.
Yeah.
I was like, this game is shit. I've only played like 4 hours of it, so...
But rightly so, because those are the most fun parts of the game where they give you the most to experiment with. After that, it becomes an on-rails experience, whereas in the starting village, you can run around, you can go up on like the tops of houses and jump off and kind of like lead this group of ganado surroundings. After that, you're on mine carts and then you're shooting like trucks that are coming at you, and that's fun from a like visceral, like throw everything in the kitchen sink at the player. But the actual fun combat game takes place during the village section and a little bit past that once you get into like the swampy area, and then it stops completely because then you're stuck playing a completely different game. And I think everybody's opinion of the game is just coming from that first like hour or two worth of gameplay because that's what they played when they were young.
Yeah. Sorry, my dog was just licking his nuts on camera. It's good stuff. What did you think of the molding?
As I was playing RE7, obviously the lack of variety was definitely noticed, but for some reason it never struck me as too big of a deal because the molded looked so fucking creepy and the way that they moved and the way their face looked and their animations were just so like someone possessed and like their bones are cracking when they're walking and stuff. I don't know, something about them just kind of got to me.
Yeah, they have a funny gait where they look like they're walking really slow, but they catch up to you very quickly.
Yeah, they'll stumble and then take like 3 steps in a row as far as humanly possible, and they they get you. I like them a lot actually.
Well, okay, you said the boss. You were talking about the boss fights. Okay, you haven't played Madhouse. I'm talking.
I have played Madhouse, but
well, yeah,
not that far.
You probably hadn't even gotten past like the Chainsaw Mia fight, for example, because you only get 27 bullets, and you gotta lay in like 23 headshots out of like the 27 bullets that you have to even fight her with.
Jared, have you beaten that on Madhouse?
No, I have not. I started on Madhouse right after I did my review because so many comments told me, and I was really liking it a lot. But then I had to start playing other games for the retrospective.
Jared, let me just say that the hardest boss fight that I've ever had in a Resident Evil game is Monster Jack. Monster Jack is the most difficult boss fight I've ever had, and I would say that something that's comparable to that would be Resident Evil 2 remakes on hardcore because I started the game on hardcore, and I had no idea that I used Jill the first time, of course, but...
You mean... Not
Claire?
Claire.
Oh, sorry. Claire, thank you.
Hand it up.
Oh yeah, somebody who's beaten Resident Evil more than 100 so times is know the name of one of their favorite characters from the game. I'm a little nervous, so what? But,
Twitter commenters will let you have it right now.
No, I got to William Birkin's version 3 with Jill, and
you mean with Claire?
That had to be one of the most difficult situations I ever had because you only have so much ammo in the game, and by the time you get to Birkin, the third version, it's nearly impossible if you don't have the required ammo. And it took me about probably 20-something times to actually beat it. And that was one of the most difficult boss fights I ever had. But Monster Jack, I beat Monster Jack on Madhouse after I'd beaten that because I went back to my game on Madhouse. I beat it after almost a year. It took me 11 months to finally complete my first game of Madhouse, and that it's quite an experience. And Resident Evil 2 Remake Hardcore is, I would say it's not quite as difficult as 7 on Madhouse, but it's almost there.
I will tell you this, that's what it seemed like to me, and I didn't stop playing because like I got stuck or anything. I just kind of had to go on and play other stuff. But I will say hardcore mode in RE2 Remake got me too. I've never beaten it on hardcore mode. I started the game off when my first experience was hardcore mode, and it blew me away because I got to the sewers with Leon, and I was just flat out of ammo. And I'm like, oh, this has not happened to me in a Resident Evil game since I was a teenager.
I hauled ass so much on my B mode play with Leon. I started with Claire first. I hauled so much ass down to the sewers and whatnot that I forgot to pick up the shotgun, which is kind of like his most important weapon. I get down there, I go, wait, I can't go back. Did I miss something? And I think it was in the room with the heart key or something. I don't know. I missed it. I got all the way down there, and I think that's actually the one I did hardcore mode on. But I got all the way down there, I go, I don't have a fucking shotgun. I'm going
to be honest with you, it's actually pretty impressive that you got down there without the shotgun.
I played it again for the anniversary, and I'm like, I guess I'm just taking shortcuts. I started with Claire again, and just on regular. And I'm taking shortcuts. I'm like, I'm not really getting through here. I'm like, I've got to be missing something. And it's kind of like, once you get through it, and not necessarily speedrun it, but you kind of like, yeah, I want to keep going and advancing. But then you just start forgetting shit that technically you can... Morty. Hey. Sorry, my dog continues to lick his nuts. It was retarded because I had gotten down here for fucking Leon on hardcore. I'm like, why? Because when you start watching shit on YouTube, you're like, oh, you can actually avoid a zombie by doing a 180 when they start the animation, and the zombie will miss you, or you can just run by them, and there's certain things you can do to elude it. So I was like, yeah, got the damn shotgun.
For the longest time, I was in the shoot them in the head to stagger them and then run by them camp. And I was totally against everybody else's strategy of hitting them at the knees and then putting them on the ground.
That's what I started doing, though.
I gotta say, I'm on the other side now.
Yeah, you definitely use the knife. The knife is, unless you're on scenario B, because if you're on scenario B, you need the knives for the version 4 of Birkin. Or was that only in...
I don't know. You run out of knives either way. Because I kind of forgot about that when I picked it back up. I'm like, oh, they're on the ground. Just knife them because it's Resident Evil 4. Oh, wait, you can't do that. Knives disappear after you use them. That's good.
Okay, you do fight Birkin version 4 on the B scenario, but you need the knives because otherwise you're going to use up all the bullets, all the ammunition that you're left with. And okay, look, you scenario B with Leon, you beat version 4 of Birkin. You're almost complete. No, or is it? No, that's... I'm sorry. You don't fight.
It's Jill.
With Jill, yeah. You fight version 4 of... you fight version 4 of Birkin with Jill. I'm totally like clouding right now because I'm just slightly nervous because we have a huge video game celebrity.
I think we can all agree in this room all together right now that the one Resident Evil game that the knife was the most important was 7.
Huh.
I never used the knife.
What?
Yeah, I never used the knife.
What?
I never had to use
You're
the knife.
kidding me.
Even on hardcore, I never
you
used the
can
knife.
ward off the moldings with the knives. Jesus.
I never used it.
Yeah. Do you ever use the block?
I never put myself in a position.
I did use the block. I started towards the middle of the game, roundabout, right before the molded started actually coming into the house and coming up from the basement. Like they started coming into the main room and stuff is when I started blocking a lot.
Man, no, dude. Like the knife in RE1, pointless. 2, pointless.
Yeah.
3, pointless. 4, very useful because it was poor game design. And then 5, who cares about 6? But yeah, 7, because with the molded start their animation lunging at you, and even if you take a hit, and by the time it takes them to get back up out of their animation as I'm making the movement on camera, you can unload knife swats at these motherfuckers. No, 7, I wouldn't use it on a boss fight. But no, knife is, on all the Resident Evils, 7 is where the knife is most important.
Damn, I never even used it. That's crazy. I used it on the first molded until I got the gun and then boom.
It'll save ammo, and it does help out.
Oh, I need to point out something. Jared, when it comes to playing Resident Evil 7 on Madhouse, if you actually beat it on Madhouse, it unlocks infinite ammo. And you can play Madhouse with infinite ammo.
You know, I think that I would love to play RE7 with infinite ammo just to do what you were talking about, just to explore, and then you could take out all of the enemies and then just really kind of take in the atmosphere of the house without like having to worry about getting into combat, your heart rate going up and stuff, you know?
Yeah, there's one little catch to the infinite ammo is that you don't get the infinite ammo until you get to the first item box. You don't get to the first item box until you've beaten Chainsaw Mia. Until you've gotten past the running away from Jack, and Jack is souped up like on Madhouse. He runs a hell of a lot faster. It's almost like he's teleporting, and it's just a hell of a feat just to get the infinite ammo. Like honestly,
I think the greatest thing that we've just sat here and discussed in terms of like the bosses and the encounters, when you rate how simplistic these are versus something that, like, you know, Resident Evil 6 where the final boss is a giant fly. Or, you know, it's fucking Wesker punching, or it's Chris punching boulders and Wesker. You know, it doesn't have that stupid outlandish bullshit. It's just, it's all contained. Like I said, it's like, you have like, you've seen that meme where, you know, the boss is in the room and there's like 3 guys and 2 of them come up with these stupid ass ideas and one comes up with the logical one. And then the next picture is him just staring at that guy and he gets thrown out the window. Yeah. I think that's what happened in that room when they were designing Resident Evil 7, because they're like, we need to keep this as contained as possible without making it fucking stupid. And
you know what? I will tell you this. I think that if you love Resident Evil 7, you have to kind of give respect to Resident Evil 6, because we would not have had that drastic of a turnaround towards atmospheric, slow-building horror if 6 wasn't so critically panned for being so explosive and, you know, in your face and popcorn.
Oh, Michael Bay. The Michael Bay of fucking...
Yeah, for sure. It is.
You're jumping buildings on motorcycles. I'm just saying.
Yeah.
Like, that's...
Absolutely, but that's what I'm saying is it took that, because there's a branching point in the timeline, right, where RE6 comes out and it kind of just plays like RE5, kind of subdued compared to what RE6 is right now, and the series keeps continuing and building up to that point, because looking from RE4 to RE5, it's essentially the same exact game.
Oh, yeah. Except with co-op
changes, right? You had the co-op and stuff, and then you have 6, which was this just fucking mind-boggling amount of explosions and in-your-face action at all times. And they dropped a lot of the horror in the atmosphere. And when they got hit for it really hard, it forced Capcom to sit down, like you were saying, in that room and go, all right, guys, we need to bring this shit right back down to earth.
That's another great thing about it, is there's a, you know, the sci-fi element of whatever, but there still is a realism element of that game that's, you know, I don't know what it is with like horror in general in the last 10 years, but I guess it was ever since True Blood, the HBO series, that there's just something creepy that you can implement from Louisiana.
Yeah.
What else? I mean, I don't know if you're a wrestling fan or not, but, you know, Bray Wyatt, they all started off as the horror people from Louisiana. And I just had something else too. Like, a lot of things just branched to that, and I think they kind of brought that in there because there is an idea of, you know, swamp people in Louisiana. I mean, there are. It's not an idea, there are. But
yeah, sure.
There's a lot of shit that goes on down there that, you know, just gets undermined. That's why there was one cop in that town. He showed up and he got impaled.
Yeah, I think that you know what, it reminds me of H.P. Lovecraft, where there was just these unexplored no man lands that he started making up lore for, because nobody had been in the Appalachians and tracked everything and found out where everything was. So that was like this unknown, like it may as well have been an outer space type of deal. And I think that's what the bayous of Louisiana is for us, because, you know, barely anyone lives there. There's a house every 100 miles or something in some of the areas, and stuff like Resident Evil 7, yeah, maybe could conceivably happen out there, you know?
We live in upstate South Carolina, and we're right at the foot of the Appalachians. And yeah, one of my drives me crazy. It just kind of gets me going, but just going through the mountains, especially like at night, It's like there's so much uninhibited land out there that anything could be going on, and it's creepy. And it's realistic at the same time because you can't prove yay or nay. And they definitely, I mean, hell, go back to the original Resident Evil. Spencer Mansion was up in a fucking mountain, Arklay Mountains or whatever. And they had a whole fucking, Umbrella had a whole lab up there at some mansion that, you know, nobody had an idea that was going on. Mm-hmm. And then all of a sudden all hell broke loose. And I do have one pet peeve that's bothered me. And bring this up now. About the idea of Raccoon City. Resident Evil 1 and 2, it's all like, oh, this fucking small town at the base of the mountains. Look at the shit now. It's like as big as fucking LA. If not bigger. When you look at the scenes, it's fucking huge. I'm like, this ain't a small town. This is a city. Like, come on, man. You gotta stick to your narrative from day one, you know?
Yeah, and you know, it started with 2 also, because Resident Evil 1 made Raccoon City sound like just a little small road stop, and RE2, you know, in the intro cinematic, that looked like a big city to me, you know?
And, yeah, that's always just kind of irked me, especially when they showed all the stuff for the remake of 3. I'm like, God, well, 6 wasn't Raccoon. Where was 6's city at? Was that even have a name, or is it just so forgettable nobody cared?
Well, they had a city in China.
Yeah.
Okay.
That was the second one. The first one was, you know, honestly, I don't even remember the first city. It was like in a college.
Yeah.
I
don't remember either. Actually, now that you mention it.
Yeah.
It was on a campus. Yeah, that was the demo though, wasn't it? Or was that in the game?
No, that was in the game.
That was the game. Yeah. That was Leon's starting area. I think someone could probably play RE6 and then play Leon's campaign for and Chris's campaign for the action, and really they wouldn't need to play anything else because there's a lot of stuff you can do in Leon and Chris's campaign. Like a lot of stuff I didn't know about mobility wise, and like you can do a quick shot that will stagger a zombie, and you can do a melee hit. I didn't know about that until my second playthrough, and a lot of the mobility options like diving out of the way and stuff. You didn't really use it because you played it like a Resident Evil game, but when you start embracing the action part of it, you can actually play through Chris's campaign and have a really good time. You just don't think it's a Resident Evil game, or else you're gonna hate it the entire time.
It's the Capcom combo breakers, basically.
Yep.
Well, since we kind of covered everything with 7, based on what you've heard, and I've shared this with Rob about the rumors of 8. The most important thing that
is that it's still in first person.
It's still going to be in first person. I don't care if there's combo breakers or not in 8. It just has to be in first person.
I prefer it to be like 7. I prefer it to be difficult.
And they need VR.
And I prefer the aiming to be difficult, just like it is in 7. I want the player should be skilled and should be good to have to play these games.
Mm-hmm. Jared, do you agree that basically Resident Evil 7 is a modern day tank control game because of how it's controlled?
It kind of has to be, because forward is always forward, and then you rotate on your axis. So technically, you could definitely say it's tank controls.
So they need to keep that with 8, and supposedly they're bringing back zombies.
I mean, I'm definitely excited about that, because that's what really got me to Resident Evil in the first place, is that weird psychological thing I have with zombies, just seeing someone that looks human to visually, but then they start acting inhumanly, and there's a weird kind of dissonance going on inside your brain when you see it, and it just messes me up. So I am happy about that, but is it confirmed it's going to be first person, or is that like you guys are hoping?
No, these are what all the rumors have been that came out of the one guy on Reddit who did confirm the remake of 3, the remake of 2. Like, the guy's got a good source that he doesn't give out. Every Resident Evil has to have that counteractive, fast enemy hunters, or I'm looking for the hunters in remake of 3, because the hunters in Revelations 2 are an absolute joke. But you had the lickers in 2. So I don't know if you've heard, but it looks like they're going to implement werewolves. What do you think about that?
I think that sounds fucking ridiculous. But that being said, if you would have told me about the lickers in RE2 before I had ever played it, and I was playing RE1 with the hunters, that would have sounded ridiculous too. Like imagine someone going like, yeah, it kills you with its tongue. You know what I mean? That would be ridiculous. So I'll wait and see if they implement it and have some type of story associated with it. Because that's what's really going to get me, is if they're able to put it into the world really well, and then it feels like an actual part of where you are. I think that's what's going to do it for me.
So Ethan's going to return, and Chris is also going to be involved. How do you feel about Ethan?
I don't think I guess towards the very, very end of the game, you start to get more glimpses of his personality. You really start to feel him in the intro during the cop cutscene, and then towards the very end when he's kind of like fighting his heart out to get through all these combat sections, and you get to hear like his little quips and stuff during cutscenes. But I don't think he was as interesting of a character, but that's because he didn't really have too many opportunities to even say anything.
But that's why I think it still comes down to they wanted that human, realistic aspect. They wanted somebody that wasn't like a trained Marine doing barrels.
It's supposed to be you. It's an avatar for
it's supposed to be avatar for you. It's why when you play in VR, you just see hands. You don't actually see his body. You see Mia, obviously, but I don't think you actually see a picture of Ethan throughout the entire Resident Evil 7, correct?
You can compare Ethan to Henry Townsend from Silent Hill 4.
Mm.
It's just an unremarkable character that it's just supposed to be an avatar.
You're gonna trigger Jerry. You're gonna trigger Jerry by bringing up Silent Hill 4.
Hey, we disagree. We disagree on a few things on Silent Hill 4, but I definitely agree with Jared's opinion. Sorry, I should just speak to you. Like I keep looking over at the speaker where your voice is coming out. But I definitely agree with Silent Hill 4: The Room. Your opinion that the camera shots are subpar compared to the first 3 games, and the lighting isn't quite as good as the first 3 games. You're a big fan of 3. 3 is your favorite, right?
Yeah, for sure. That's probably.
As a matter of fact, I think you actually you tweeted a couple of days ago about 3 actually being your favorite horror game. I think it was yesterday.
If I'm forced to say a top 4, Silent Hill 3 is in that top 4 no matter what.
Well, I like Silent Hill 3 almost as much as the first game. Like, the first game will always be my favorite.
I get that. I mean, like, you could make a really convincing argument for that side, honestly. So I totally get where you're coming from there.
So to be fair, when it comes to my favorite Silent Hill games, I actually like 4 more than 2. And I know a lot of people would say the 2 is the greatest, and I don't agree with that. I think honestly the first or the third is the number 1 greatest.
Silent Hill 2 to me is like the Resident Evil 4 in terms of popularity of the Silent Hill franchise.
Yeah,
I think it was an early
overrated. Yeah,
I think it was an early PS2 game that was very polished. That people recognized the name.
Still really good.
I'm sure it's still really good. Yeah.
Oh, it's amazing. I love Silent Hill 2, but it's definitely overrated. And I think you're spot on there. I didn't even think about that, but it is the RE4 of Silent Hill because I think that's because. Okay, so look at it this way: you had Silent Hill 1 on the PS1, and that was a cult hit, and it made a decent amount of money. It sold enough copies to get a greatest hits collection, which Konami was not expecting. So then they put all of this money into the production of Silent Hill 2, and it was going to come out on the PS2. So while we're looking at footage of how this new console is going to look, we're looking at 60 frames per second cutscenes from Silent Hill 2, and it's blowing our minds. So it had a very similar impact as Resident Evil 4, where it's like new hardware, new game, like, you know what I mean? So it's overhyped in my opinion, because I love the first and third games so much. But that being said, it's still absolutely amazing.
I don't know if you saw also, supposedly, the same. I don't know if it's the same source, but Konami's working on 2 new Silent Hill games.
I have heard that, and I think that's a solid 50-50. It could go terribly, or they could learn from Capcom, and they could see that if they turn their company around, they could get some dead serious profits by putting some real effort into making a Silent Hill game.
There's a lot of push on the internet right now, too, for Kojima to actually make a horror game and finish PT, but obviously not call it Silent Hills.
That's not going to happen.
I think that would be a bad idea, if you ask me.
Did you play Death Stranding at all?
I have not played Death Stranding, but I have a few friends who are diehard trying to get me to play it. I haven't really looked into the game very much, but it doesn't look like anything that I would get into. But everybody's saying like it's awesome.
Yeah, it's either you love it or you hate it. I mean, if you look at the reviews, it's like everybody's like, "Oh, I love Pokemon, but I'm forced to review Death Stranding, and I hate it because it's not normal." And then there's people that are just the people that love it. I mean, are they kiss assers of Kojima? Like, is that just kind of it?
I mean, he's got fanboys. You know he does.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah. About it. But at the same time, I've never seen somebody promote a game like Kojima does. It's like you're at work one day, and all of a sudden you get a call from the front, and it's like, "Oh, Kojima's here to show off his game," and you're like, "Dude, I work at Pizza Hut." You know, and he's here to show there and play it off, and like I guess Conan O'Brien's in the game too. It's just like an NPC or something, and I don't know. I just heard it's out there, but it's one of the like I'd have to watch somebody play it and decide if I want to be in the mood to do it or not. I was kind of excited about it, but it's a strange concept. But I still would like. Sure. Did you ever see the footage for Silent Hills that did get released like a month or two ago?
Yeah, and I don't know. I will say this. I would like to see Kojima make a horror game, but the same way Team Hijinks and all the Western companies that touched Silent Hill after Team Silent was disbanded, Kojima I'm not confident he understands what Silent Hill is about because most of the fans don't understand what Silent Hill is about. And I don't think that he has the chops for slow building, atmospheric, let's say, euphemism-laden horror, because Kojima's big thing has been saying everything that's in the game out loud in front of the player, which I enjoy. I really love the Metal Gear Solid games, and I'm one of the people who actually defends MGS4. I think it's really fun.
No, I was just talking about that earlier. MGS4 is the best one.
I really like MGS4 a lot. It had a really interesting story, but Kojima's style just isn't compatible. And you could see it even back in the days of Snatcher and Police Knots, where everything was voice acted and everything was told to the player out loud in plain English, whereas Silent Hill is very subdued, and a lot of that story is in the background. It's inferred by the player. And I think Kojima touching Silent Hill would be a mistake. But Kojima making a horror game like PT would be really, really cool because PT had absolutely nothing to do with Silent Hill. And if he continued in that direction, that would be really amazing. I think if he touched Silent Hill, it would be an absolutely terrible game. It'd be another Resident Evil 6 situation where it would probably be really, really cool and very interesting, but it would not be a Silent Hill game.
So one last thing I wanted to touch on that I'd forgotten about, going back to the announcements for Resident Evil 8. There is supposed to be a spirit that follows you. Have you heard that as well?
Damn it, no. I've been trying to stay away from the information because it's all been pissing me off.
Well, the thing is, you could say that rips off PT, but if you remember correctly, Resident Evil 3.5, what was supposed to be 4 that, got kicked off, that had, the one spirit in it. What do they call that? The axe guy?
Hookman.
Hookman. Hooker dude. Dude that gets hookers. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think that one would have had a good atmosphere. I think that out of all the rumors that have come out about 8, that the main ones to focus on, and really, you can do what you want with it. Just keep it first person. That's all that matters. Slow the pace.
No, man. I disagree because 7 worked not just because it was first person, but because of a very specific combination of elements. Because you had the first person camera angle, but then you also had the really interesting atmosphere. Then you had the level design of the Baker Mansion or Baker Estate, right? And then you have like the combat, which is very specifically tailor-made to be a good combination between first-person shooting and Resident Evil style, very difficult, very high-risk, high-reward combat. And I feel like if you start throwing in elements like that, it'd be very easy to throw that very delicate formula off track.
I agree. But if they were to I mean, if something works, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Right? That's what I'm trying to say.
I would actually, to be honest, I would be interested in seeing the Resident Evil series continue in the RE2 remake and RE3 remake direction with the shoulder camera, which is crazy for me to say, because, you know, I'm the one who's always bitching about pre-rendered cameras and stuff, but even I recognize that we're not going to see a fixed camera angle tank controls Resident Evil game again in our lifetime. It's just not going to happen.
It would be nice. It would be nice if they did.
Oh, it would be amazing. You know what I mean? I would back that project out of my own. I would just take all the money out of my bank account and give it to Capcom. But we're never going to see that happen because those of us who like the tank control survival horror Resident Evils are sadly we're in the minority, and we don't have any purchasing power with Capcom. So if we are going to go into a new direction, I really enjoyed RE2 Remake and what they did with it, and I think that could be put into the Resident Evil formula fairly easily now that I've seen it working. So I could go first person or third person, honestly. I think both of them could work really well.
I want first person.
I want first person. But I have a remedy for all of us that want fixed camera angles, and for you of those that are watching or listening or see this 2 years from now, when you stumble upon the page. There's a little game called Daymare 1998 coming out April 20th or 28th. Are you familiar with that?
Yeah, they actually sent me a review copy to review on PC.
So have you played it yet?
Yeah, I beat it.
So the original project, I guess it's hitting consoles on April 20th or 28th. I guess it's been on PC.
Yeah.
But I remember, because I first reported this for my site when it first came out, because they were doing a remake of Resident Evil 2.
Mm-hmm.
And Capcom didn't like that, so they said, no, fuck you, cease and desist. We're going to do a remake of Resident Evil 2.
Yeah.
But the original had fixed camera angles, but I watched the trailer the other day, and it's the over-the-shoulder. Does that have an option to do fixed camera angles in it, or no?
It does not, but the last time I played it was, a long time. I forget when I made that video, honestly. I know that they've been actively supporting it since then, which is really, really cool. But when I played it back when I had a review copy, so it wasn't live yet, you could not. You only had the third-person option.
I think they might have scrapped it. There's another game that just came out, and it's for PS4 only. I guess Sony had started to offer like smaller studios or smaller teams a platform to release, games on. And I sent Rob the link for it. I can't remember what it's called, but it is a game that looks like it was made in 1998. And the graphics look dated, but it has fixed camera angles, and it's a horror game. And
Right. Somebody tweeted at me about it.
I think it might have been me that tweeted at you about it.
For sure. Yeah.
So I tried to email them for a review copy, but I didn't hear back because they asked me if I wanted one. I was like, yeah, and then nothing. So I like to play. I think we all are in agreement across the board that we do want something to return to form on that. Mm-hmm. But I guess you can't produce for the masses. Although I still think that there should be a Resident Evil that just offers all three choices. But
I totally agree. And you know what? You're right. I think the indie scene is the spot where you would see something like with fixed camera angles, tank controls, and all that. The only problem with that is you need a certain level of A, experience, and B, funding to really make a game like Resident Evil work in the modern day, because you need a real understanding of the mechanics of how that works, because you can have tank controls and have them feel terrible, and you can have survival horror and have it not work with the gameplay very well. So I think with a lot of we're in this weird middle ground where it would take someone with enough money to really understand game creation, to really make a good RE clone. But then if somebody has that much money they're putting into a project, they're going to want as many people to play it as possible. And, there's not enough of us to fund that kind of project,
Yeah, definitely. Well, we're about an hour in, so I guess we're going to wrap this up. We didn't get... we talked a little bit about Resident Evil 7, but we branched off into so much other stuff that resulted into amazing content. And Jared, I wanted to thank you for doing this with us.
Absolutely, man. It's fun as hell.
It's been fantastic, and hopefully we can do this more in the future, find some other subjects. Because I know you two got some things you want to share about Silent Hill eventually, but that's going to be for another episode.
Yeah, Jared, I would love to get together and talk about Silent Hill and talk about Resident Evil again, because I could talk for hours and hours about Resident Evil.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Me and you both, and definitely I'm down for that.
So check out Jared at Avalanche Reviews on YouTube. He's pretty big. Check us out at Welcome to Die Gaming. We'll keep getting stuff out. And that's it. What's your outro there, Rob?
This is Welcome to Die Gaming. Thank you for joining us.
Okay.